This is a list of recurring characters from Earth in the science fiction television show Stargate SG-1. Topic: Stargate Command personnel. The Stargate Command (SGC) is a fictional military base at the real Cheyenne Mountain Complex near Colorado Springs, Colorado. It is the main setting in Stargate SG-1 and occasionally features on Stargate Atlantis. The base extends many levels beneath the ground and is protected from most forms of attack, including indirect nuclear detonations, also serving to contain biological, chemical or alien hazards to the outside world by means of a «lockdown» status. Stargate Command is typically commanded by a general and is staffed by subject matter experts and military support personnel, several elite special operations teams, and several SG teams, including SG-1. The majority of the teams are United States Air Force with some United States Marine Corps, civilians and United States Army, but other nations have SG teams operating from the SGC as well after the events of Season 5. Janet Fraiser. Captain, Major Janet Fraiser, the resident chief medical officer of the SGC, played by Terrell Rothery, seasons 1 to 7, 9. She is responsible for maintaining the health of the SG teams, as well as the SGC's support staff and base personnel. On many occasions, she also cares for the health of alien refugees to Earth, including Go-Out symbiotes. In her first appearance in The Broca Divide, Dr. Fraiser holds the rank of captain, and is promoted to major in Season 3. In Season 1's Singularity, Fraiser adopts Cassandra, an alien orphan whose people had been exterminated by the Go-Out system Lord Nirti. Dr. Fraiser is killed by a staffweapon blast in Season 7's Heroes during an off-world medical emergency, but she returns in Season 9's Ripple Effect as a parallel universe version of Dr. Fraiser, in her reality a regular member of SG-1. Before Fraiser returns to her reality, Carter, Jackson and Teal'c are able to give her a final goodbye. Dr. Fraiser is also shown alive in an alternate timeline in the year 2010 in Season 4's 2010, but Fraiser and SG-1 alter the timeline to prevent a catastrophe on Earth involving the Ashen race. Fraiser joined the United States Air Force (USAF) after breaking up with her husband. There she got some training with firearms. Her husband didn't want Fraiser to join the U.S. military, which is one of the main reasons for their breakup. As a doctor, Fraiser looks for peaceful solutions and is disinclined towards armed solutions. In the episode, "Serpent's Song", Fraiser is the only one in Stargate Command (SGC) who is resistant to the idea to give Apophis over to his enemies. She is eventually forced to give up Apophis. Terrell Rothery was asked by then producer and writer for Stargate Jonathan Glassner and Brad Wright if she wanted to play the role as Fraiser. In an interview, Rothery was asked what it was like to play a doctor in Stargate SG-1. Rothery replied, "Just being true to the character. And as far as the medical stuff, knowing what to do and what to say." She got a lot of help from the medical advisor on the set. In the first 2 seasons, Rothery didn't have a contract and was booked on every episode in which she appeared. In Season 3 of SG-1, she finally got a contract deal with the producers. She also commented on her acting life once. After her character's death in Season 7, there were various rumors which said she would appear in the upcoming Stargate film. This never happened. Rothery said it was unlikely since she hadn't had any contact with the Stargate producers since her character's death. Rothery has stated many times that she admires the character because of her strength and intelligence. Robert C. Cooper, producer for Stargate SG-1, called Rothery about the death of her character. Cooper said, "It is our last year, so we are thinking of killing one of our regulars." Fraiser was killed off in the episode, "Heroes," because the producers thought Season 7 would be the last in the series and felt that a death of the main cast was needed. Rothery also appeared on the Women of Sci-Fi calendar produced by fellow Stargate cast Michael Shanks and Christopher Judge. Awards and decorations. The following are the medals and service awards fictionally worn by Dr. Fraiser. Kevin Elliot. Lieutenant Kevin Elliot, played by Courtney J. Stevens, Season 5 C. Martouf, is transferred to SG-17 after successfully proving his worth in an elaborative test for SGC recruits. All of SG-17 was killed on his first day of off-world duty, except for Elliot, in an attack on the underground Tok'ra by the Goa'uld. Elliot was saved only because of the implantation of the Tok'ra symbiote Lantash. Lantash and Elliot give their lives to save the rest of the team when they realize that Lantash did not have the strength to repair Elliot's injuries and save their lives. Elliot, Lantash were given a vial of symbiote poison, powerful enough to eliminate the entire occupied force, and, presumably, used it on them to allow SG-1 and Jacob Carter to escape. According to portraying actor Courtney J. Stevens, the first draft for the character was that he was supposed to be a young Jack O'Neill in the then-new spin-off show Stargate Atlantis. The producers dropped Elliot and minimized his role so that he was never even mentioned in Stargate Atlantis. Many fans of Stargate thought that Elliot and his team would replace Samantha Carter, Teal'c, Daniel Jackson and O'Neill as the main characters of the show. Stevens has stated that the producers took much time to look at new options for the series and further stated that he knew they were looking at it. But the plans were changed and actor Stevens left the Stargate set in Vancouver after the shooting of Last Stand. When shooting the episode, Summit, J.R. Bourne was booked, so he was replaced with Stevens. Before being cast in the episode, Summit, the producers told the history behind the Tok'ra symbiote Lantash. Stevens was later cast as Keras in the Stargate Atlantis episode, Childhood's End. Walter Harriman. Chief Master Sergeant Walter Harriman, also known as the Chevron Guy among others, portrayed by Gary Jones, seasons 1 to 10, is a fictional character in the series Stargate SG-1, who joined the Stargate Command (SGC) after excelling in navigation and automatic flight control operations during the First Gulf War. General Hammond recruited him as someone with excellent technical ability and a cool head to operate the Stargate under extreme pressure. He specializes in installing, maintaining and repairing bomb navigation, weapons control as well as automatic flight control systems. He is also an expert in radio and navigational equipment, and in maintaining test and precision measurement equipment. He is primarily a Stargate technician, running the dialing computer and other equipment from the control room. He also acts as an occasional administrative assistant to the head of Stargate Command, and has manned the flight console on the bridge of the Prometheus. From Season 8 to 10, Harriman's role is expanded to advisor to the head of command of the SGC. His name has been a source of confusion for many fans of Stargate SG-1. Originally, he was simply technician or sergeant, listed as such in the show credits. At some point, some of the writers gave him the name Norman Davis, which came with a name tag, but was never used in dialogue. In the episode 2010, Jack O'Neill refers to him as Walter. Later, in the 8th season of Stargate SG-1, the character is addressed as Sergeant Harriman, with Harriman actually basing on General George Hammond addressing him as Airman. What was misheard by fans because of Don S. Davis's Texan accent, resulting in the final name of Walter Harriman. Many fans fondly refer to him as the Chevron Guy, as many of his on-screen appearances, especially earlier on in the show, had him saying, "Chevron, insert number here encoded," on several DVD commentaries after the introduction of the name, Walter. Producer-director Peter DeLuise refers to the character as Walter Norman and Walter Norman Davis. The first time he ever says his own name is in the Stargate Atlantis episode, Home. As the series continued, Harriman got a heavier role in the series. According to Jones, his role was expanded since Richard Dean Anderson wanted him as his personal assistant in the show when his character Jack O'Neill was the leader of the SGC. The Stargate producer and writer staff called 2005 the year of Walter because the staff evolved Harriman's relationship with General Hank Landry. Jones does not have a binding contract with the Stargate producers. Awards and decorations. The following are the medals and service awards fictionally worn by Chief Harriman. Charles Kawalsky. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kawalsky, portrayed by John Diehl in the film and Jay Acavone in the series, was first introduced in the 1994 Stargate, as Jack O'Neill's second-in-command for the first mission through the Stargate. In the film, Kawalsky holds the rank of lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force. He is recruited by General W.O. West to become a member of the first mission through the Stargate. On Abydos under the orders of O'Neill, he takes up the fight against Ra. Kowalski's relationship with Daniel Jackson worsens throughout the film because Jackson is unable to return him to Earth. He changes his view of Jackson after they defeat Ra. He, O'Neill and Louis Ferretti decide to keep silent about what really happened during their mission to the planet. When the Goa'uld Apophis attacks Stargate Command (SGC), Captain Kowalski is reunited with his former teammates and questioned by General George Hammond. Both he and Ferretti refuse to speak about the mission to Abydos. O'Neill is eventually forced to tell that Daniel Jackson is still alive, and O'Neill, Kowalski and Ferretti are ordered to bring Jackson back to Earth. Although Kawalsky wore the rank of lieutenant colonel in the Stargate film, Kawalsky is introduced as a captain who is promoted to major, and becomes the leader of the newly formed SG-2, accompanying SG-1 on their mission to Chulak to rescue Shara and Skara. SG-2 guarded the Stargate and provided cover for SG-1 when they fled from the pursuing Jaffa. Before Kawalsky returns to Earth, he is invaded by a Goa'uld parasite from a dead Jaffa warrior. Back on Earth, the symbiote starts to take control of him, resulting in several blackouts. The medical staff of the SGC try to surgically remove the Goa'uld from his body. Though initially successful, the symbiote turns out to be a dead husk whose intelligence has already taken over Kawalsky's mind. He frees himself and tries to flee from the base, setting off a self-destruct mechanism as he dials the Stargate. He is apprehended by Teal'c while the self-destruct mechanism is disarmed. They fight in front of the open Stargate. Kawalsky is killed when Teal'c forces his head through the event horizon and closes the gate, severing most of Kawalsky's skull including the lobes controlled by the symbiote. Kawalsky appears in 3 more episodes of the series in flashback. The first is, "The Gamekeeper", in which O'Neill and Teal'c encounter Kawalsky in a virtual reality simulation. In "Point of View", Kawalsky and Samantha Carter from an alternate reality arrive through the gate seeking help in contacting the Asgard. His last appearance is in Season 8, in which Kawalsky returns in an alternate timeline accidentally created when the destruction of their time machine traps SG-1 in the distant past. In a partial mirror to the pilot, Kawalsky accompanies O'Neill, Carter and Daniel to Chulak in Part 2 of Mobius. In this last appearance, he again meets his end, although here he is merely shot. It is the alternate Daniel Jackson who is infected with the Goa'uld and killed by Teal'c. Darren Sumner called Kawalsky one of the 1994 film's strongest characters. Sumner called the high death numbers of secondary and recurring characters on the show, the Kawalsky effect. A Kawalsky action figure was created after the release of the 1994 film. He also has a card in the card game, Stargate TCG. In the card game he is listed as a good soldier. While only appearing in 6 episodes in total, actor Jay Ackervone frequently appears at Stargate conventions. Sly Siler. Master Sergeant Sly Siler, played by Dan Shea, Seasons 1 to 10, a sergeant at the SGC and one of its primary technicians and engineers. First appearing in Season 1's Solitudes, he remains a background character throughout the run of Stargate SG-1 and also occasionally appears in Earth-based episodes of Stargate Atlantis. Dan Shea is primarily the stunt coordinator for Stargate SG-1, responsible for the budgets and locations of stunts, and the hiring of stunt people before coordinating all stunt action. He is also a stunt double for Richard Dean Anderson, for whom he stood in and stunt doubled in MacGyver. Siler is subsequently shown to be involved in many accidents at the SGC, which is parodied in dialogue and action in several SG-1 episodes such as Season 4's Window of Opportunity, Season 7's Heroes, and the milestone episode 200. Shea first auditioned for the role as Siler with executive producer Brad Wright and director Martin Wood. Shea commented on his first audition that he tried to be funny, thinking he could get the role easier that way. Executive producer Michael Greenberg said that Shea blew it. Shea then went for a second audition acting more serious, since according to Greenberg the role was serious, and he needed to act that way. Siler also frequently appears in the background of scenes carrying an oversized wrench, which he sometimes hands to director Martin Wood as a gag prop in the series. Siler's first name is never mentioned in dialogue in the series, although his uniform patch and magazines give his first name as Sly several times, and his uniform patch in Entity reads Dan. According to producer and writer Peter DeLuise, Siler's name and dialogue deliberately contain the letter S. Because Dan Shea lisps. Shea had previous worked with both Richard Dean Anderson, who portrayed Jack O'Neill, and Greenberg before on the American television series MacGyver in the 80s and early 90s as Anderson's stand-in in stunt scenes. He continued this role in Stargate SG-1. Anderson's partner Greenberg gave the job as stunt coordinator and stand-in to Shea in Stargate SG-1. The first time Shea was officially double for Anderson was in Toronto when they did a MacGyver movie. Anderson had broken his foot, so Shea was forced to do a stand-in. Topic: Minor characters. Major Louis Ferretti, played by French Stewart in the film as Lieutenant Louis Ferretti and Brent State in Season 1, a member of the United States Air Force and one of the 4 survivors of the first expedition through the Stargate in Stargate. Ferretti joins O'Neill's team on another mission to Abydos in Children of the Gods, and is put in charge of the SG-2 team after the death of Charles Kawalsky in The Enemy Within. Ferretti makes his last appearance in Within the Serpent's Grasp to follow SG-1 through the Stargate, and is mentioned in Season 3's Shades of Grey as a possible new leader of SG-1. Colonel Robert Makepeace, played by Steve Mackage, Seasons 1 to 3, was a former member of the United States Marine Corps and of Stargate Command (SGC). Originally, Makepeace was the commander of SG-3. His first on-screen appearance is in The Broca Divide as ranking officer and team leader of SG-3. He reappears in the 2 episodes, two-parters in Stargate SG-1 Season 2. In the two-parters of Season 2, Makepeace leads a rescue mission to save SG-1 without Teal'c from the grasp of Hathor in Into the Fire. In Season 3's Shades of Grey, Makepeace is discovered to be a spy for the rogue NID group under the command of Colonel Harry Maybourne, who is covertly reverse engineering stolen alien technologies. Smaller items stolen by the rogue group would be left on a designated world for Makepeace to covertly pick up and pack back to Earth in his gear during routine missions. O'Neill had Makepeace arrested and charged with high treason against the United States and its allies. While it is unknown who immediately replaced Makepeace as the commander of SG-3, eventually this position was assigned to Colonel Reynolds. Colonel Albert Reynolds, played by Eric Brecker, Seasons 2, 5, 7–10, introduced in Touchstone as a major stationed at Area 51 and a member of the National Intelligence Department (NID). In early 2001, he is promoted to lieutenant colonel and was given command of SG-16 on a mission to Valona. By early 2003, Reynolds had received command of SG-3, succeeding Robert Makepeace, who was charged for high treason against the United States and its allies. He was also one of the few airmen who helped Jack O'Neill defend Stargate Command against the Replicator army that Replicator Carter had sent through the Stargate to attack Earth while she focused on conquering the Milky Way galaxy. Reynolds was the leader of the SGC during Hank Landry's vacation to Jack O'Neill's cabin. Samantha Carter assumed his post until he returned from his mission to P9J333. Dr. Robert Rothman, played by Jason Schombing, seasons 3 to 4, a scientist who prior to joining Stargate Command was Daniel's research assistant. He first appears in Season 3's "Forever in a Day" in a hand device-induced delusion of Daniel Jackson, where he is placed on SG-1. His first non-fantasy appearance is in "Crystal Skull", where Rothman is tasked with researching a crystal skull. Rothman becomes a host to a Goa'uld larva and during a rescue mission on an off-world archaeological dig site in "The First Ones", and is shot dead by Colonel Jack O'Neill. Major Michael Griff, played by Russell Ferrier, Season 4, was a member of SG-2 as a captain. He accompanied SG-1 in its search to recover SG-11 and Dr. Daniel Jackson on P3X888. During the course of the mission he was wounded by a staff weapon blast, but recovered. As commander of SG-2, Griff led a search for SG-1 after that team went missing on P3R118. After braving a glacier that Administrator Calder had insisted SG-1 had set out to investigate, he became convinced that Colonel O'Neill would never have authorized such a mission. At General Hammond's instruction, Griff drew up plans for a covert search and rescue mission, which ultimately proved unnecessary. Later that year, Griff and SG-2 were assigned to babysit a team of scientists on M4C862, a mission he sarcastically described as non-stop excitement. When O'Neill and Teal'c arrived to relieve him, he was visibly pleased not to be responsible for dealing with the scientists anymore. Dr. Bill Lee, played by Bill Dow, seasons 4, 6 to 10, a civilian scientist and engineer who works at Stargate Command and is often called upon to work with alien technology. He first appears in Prodigy, but does not step in the foreground until Evolution, where he and Daniel go on a mission to Honduras to locate the Ancient's healing device but are captured and tortured by local terrorists. As seen in Heroes, Dr. Lee is responsible for creating a staff weapon-resistant armor. He is also a recurring character on Stargate Atlantis. He devises a way to relay a warning to Atlantis in Critical Mass and gates to the Pegasus galaxy from the Midway station in Adrift. When Atlantis goes missing, Dr. Lee remains stationed at Midway, training Kavanagh as his replacement, until the Midway station is destroyed in Midway. Dr. Lee is seen in Stargate Universe's pilot, Air, as the person Dr. Nicholas Rush Robert Carlyle transfers to using the communication device with stones. See Ancient Technology in Stargate. Major Evan Lorne, played by Kevin Smith, seasons 7 and 10, a member of SG-11, Lorne first appears in Stargate SG-1 episode, Enemy Mine. Lorne appears as the team leader of the SG-1 unit in an alternate universe in the SG-1 Season 10 episode, The Road Not Taken. Lorne reappears as a part of the new personnel sent after the Wraith siege by the Daedalus in Stargate Atlantis. Dr. Carolyn Lamb, played by Lexa Doig, seasons 9 to 10, Stargate Command's chief medical officer in seasons 9 and 10. She first appears in Avalon Part 2 and is seemingly the first permanent one since the death of Dr. Janet Fraiser in Season 7. Prior to joining Stargate Command, Dr. Lamb worked with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Her specialty is infectious diseases. Dr. Lamb has a strained relationship with her father, General Hank Landry. In The Fourth Horseman, General Landry apologizes for not having been with her when she needed him as a child. Carolyn, her father and her mother Kim Lamb, have dinner in the episode, Family Ties. Actress Lexa Doig is the real-life spouse of Michael Shanks, who plays Daniel Jackson. Other countries' characters. Chekov. Colonel Chekov, played by Gary Chalk, seasons 5 to 6, 8 to 10, Russia's liaison to Stargate Command following the early season 4 events of the short-lived Russian Stargate program. He first appears in season 5's The Tomb, blaming SG-1 for the death of several Russian SG team members. Chekov collaborates with the SGC several episodes later in 48 Hours, giving them a DHD from Russian possession and allowing the SGC to use the Russian Stargate. Colonel Chekov is appointed as the Russian envoy to the SGC around Season 6's Redemption, and agrees to give the Russian Stargate to the US in exchange for money, X-302 technology, and a Russian SG team. In Season 6's Disclosure, Colonel Chekov supports the US's presentation for the disclosure of the Stargate program to the other 3 permanent members of the UN Security Council. In Season 8's Full Alert, Colonel Chekov helps General O'Neill deal with the possible go-out compromise of the U.S. government and establishes a direct line between O'Neill and the Russian president to avert a nuclear war. Chekov appears in Season 9's The Fourth Horseman and Crusade, where he has become a Russian representative of the IOA. He makes his last appearance in Camelot as the commander of the Earthship Korolev to stop the Ori fleet from invading the Milky Way, but is killed when his ship was obliterated by the Ori fleet, though 6 other crew members were transported from the ship before its destruction. Gary Chalk was assigned to the role as Chekov by executive producer Michael Greenberg and N. John Smith. They asked him if he could speak Russian. Chalk replied, "No." Greenberg then replied, "No matter," and gave him his own Russian coach named Alexander Kalugin, who made an appearance in the Stargate SG-1 episode, Watergate, as one of the Russian soldiers. Portraying actor Chalk had previously worked with Richard Dean Anderson, Don S. Davis and Greenberg in 1986 on MacGyver and Smith in The Beachcombers. Greenberg had said to Chalk that they were going to bring him into the show. At first there was no audition or a single phone call, until Season 5 of the series. During the show's history, Chalk begged the producers for his character to go through the Stargate, but they said no, but eventually they came up with the idea of giving him his own starship. Chalk was the only non-Russian actor assigned in Flesh and Blood. Topic: Secret intelligence characters. The National Intelligence Department (NID) is a shadowy intelligence agency that appears throughout the run of Stargate SG-1 and occasionally on Stargate Atlantis. The official mandate of the NID is to provide vital civilian oversight of top-secret military operations, but one of their unofficial primary goals is to procure alien technologies. A set of well-resourced illegal cells named the Rogue NID uses unscrupulous methods to achieve the goals of the official NID and is later replaced by the Trust, a shady interplanetary terrorist group. The International Oversight Advisory (IOA) is a civilian oversight committee created after the United States and Russia revealed the existence of the Stargate program to the other permanent members of the UN Security Council in Season 6. Malcolm Barrett Special Agent Malcolm Barrett, played by Peter Fleming, Seasons 5–7, 9–10, an NID agent introduced in Season 5's Wormhole Extreme. His first significant appearance follows in Smoke and Mirrors, where he helps uncovering a shadow group behind the NID who tried to attribute Senator Kinsey's apparent assassination to O'Neill. After collaborating with SG-1 in Season 7's Heroes, Part 2 and Resurrection, Barrett expresses a personal romantic interest in Samantha Carter in Season 9's Ex Deus Machina and Season 10's Uninvited, but she rejects his advances. His last SG-1 appearance is in Dominion. Agent Barrett also recurs in Stargate Atlantis. He warns General Landry in Season 2's Critical Mass of the Trust's plan to destroy Atlantis with a bomb, and aids several expedition team members to track down Rodney Mackay's sister Jeannie Miller on Earth in Season 4's Miller's Crossing. Peter Fleming had a two-line audition for Wormhole Extreme for a Man in Black character in a possible recurring role. Every NID character introduced before Agent Barrett had been very shady, always had an agenda, and Barrett was the first mainstay in NID who is actually law-abiding, honest, and a good person. Harry Maybourne. Colonel Harry Maybourne, played by Tom McBeath, Seasons 1–6, 8, a USAF colonel introduced in Season 1's Enigma, as an NID member with ambiguous morals and loyalties. In Season 2's Bane, Maybourne leads an NID attempt to claim Teal'c for study after alien insect infected Teal'c. After further antagonizing SG-1 through rogue NID operations in Touchstone and Shades of Grey, and helping SG-1 in Foothold, Maybourne flees to Russia and aids in establishing the Russian Stargate program. He is caught in Season 4's Watergate, convicted of treason, and placed on death row. O'Neill contacts Maybourne in Chain Reaction to help reinstate General Hammond, who was blackmailed into resigning from his position. Maybourne escapes after the mission's success and covertly helps O'Neill in Season 5's Desperate Measures and 48 Hours in the Adrian Conrad case. Maybourne tricks SG-1 into taking him off-world in Season 6's Paradise Lost, and is eventually exiled to a far-off planet. When SG-1 meets him again in Season 8's It's Good to Be King, Maybourne leads a life of leisure as the seemingly clairvoyant ruler of the local peoples, King Arkan I. Although the people later discover the deception, they welcome him to stay as his technological expertise has improved their standard of life, and SG-1 returns to Earth without him. He had ascended to power using an ancient time traveler's log of his journeys into the future of the planet and ended up facing a Goa'uld invasion, but the soldiers were repelled by Jackson and Teal'c with help from one of the villagers, and O'Neill destroyed in the ship in orbit, killing the system lord behind the attack. When the team leave, O'Neill and Maybourne part amicably, with Maybourne having finally accepted responsibility towards the people he was ruling. He also reveals that he had more than one wife. Maybourne's most notable character trait is his ambiguous morals and loyalties. Maybourne's relationship with Jack O'Neill in the show varies from enemy to collaborator. After his arrest, most of his cronies left Maybourne for dead in jail. O'Neill agrees to help Maybourne temporarily get out of jail, if he in turn could get General George Hammond reinstated as leader of the Stargate Command (SGC) Center. Early on in Maybourne's character development there were rumors of him being in love with Samantha Carter. It was originally planned that a scene in the series would depict Maybourne's feelings for Carter, but the scene was cut and the relationship was never spoken about again amongst the Stargate SG-1 producers and writers alike. When the portraying actor Tom McBeath was asked about the O'Neill-Maybourne relationship, he explained, "McBeath auditioned for the part of Maybourne in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. After auditioning for the part as Harry Maybourne, the producers revealed that he maybe could get a spot as a recurring character in the show. McBeath called his role as Maybourne at the start of the series boring, but was glad for the new change in the character's direction in the series after he was convicted for treason." McBeath also commented that the writers and the producers for the show had more fun when his character started to loosen up. McBeath once stated that the character of Maybourne diminished after Richard Dean Anderson's departure from the show in Season 8. Robert Kinsey. Senator Robert Kinsey, played by Ronnie Cox, Seasons 1, 4–8, a U.S. Senator who first appears in Season 1's Politics. In Politics, Kinsey ignores warnings of an imminent Goa'uld invasion and instead manages to briefly shut down Stargate Command for budget reasons. In Season 4's Chain Reaction, Kinsey and the NID temporarily succeed in controlling the Stargate by blackmailing General Hammond into retirement. In Season 5's 2001, Kinsey aims to gain prestige through an alliance with the Ashen, but the alliance fails. However, the alliance went ahead in the alternate but unfulfilled future reality witnessed in Season 4's 2010. In which Kinsey also achieved his goal of the presidency. In Season 6's Smoke and Mirrors, a group controlling the rogue NID, known as the Committee, tries to assassinate Kinsey and frame O'Neill for his murder, but NID agent Malcolm Barrett and SG-1 foil this attempt. Kinsey becomes vice president in Season 7's Inauguration, and tries again to take control of the Stargate program in Lost City. Shortly after, NID agent Richard Woolsey presents incriminating evidence against Kinsey to President Henry Hayes in the same episode. Hayes accepts Kinsey's resignation. Kinsey makes his last appearance in Season 8's Full Alert, where the SGC convinces Kinsey to go undercover to undermine the hierarchy of the Trust. However, the Goa'uld have completely infiltrated the Trust through their operatives working outside of the Solar System, and have already implanted a symbiote within Kinsey to aid in their plans of starting a nuclear war between the US and Russia. After the SGC foil the attempt, Kinsey flees aboard an Alkesh, but Kinsey's future remains uncertain as the Alkesh is destroyed while he operated a transport device. Kinsey is briefly mentioned as a president in the alternative timeline with Hayes as Secretary of Defense in Season 8 finale, Mobius. The producers of Stargate SG-1 asked Ronnie Cox if he would be interested in a role in one episode, but according to Cox it was, "so much fun that they and I decided we would like to do more together." According to executive producer Brad Wright, every time they got a script from an outside editor, Kinsey was included. Cox has been noted for saying that the character has become a malevolent force on the show because of the collaboration between the producers and himself. Cox described him as a self-aggrandizing senator who likes to throw his weight around, and as Kinsey feels that the Stargate is being used in completely the wrong way and one that is endangering American ideals and a way of life that he believes in, and a born-again, right-wing, Christian fundamentalist. Cox played him as a heroic antagonist rather than villainous. Cox was approached by the producers to play Kinsey instead of auditioning himself. Kinsey holds the position of chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee until Season 7 and oversees the national defense budget of secret projects such as the Stargate program. Richard Woolsey. Richard Woolsey, played by Robert Picardo, Seasons 7, 9–10. Woolsey's first appearance is following the death of Dr. Janet Fraiser late in Season 7 of Stargate SG-1. Woolsey is brought into Stargate Command in the episode, Heroes, to examine the command decisions and threatens SGC personnel with court-martial if they do not cooperate. When Woolsey brings his report to President Hayes in Inauguration, he comes to realize Senator Kinsey's ambitions and presents incriminating evidence against him, indirectly forcing Kinsey into resigning. Woolsey returns in the Season 9 episode, Prototype, and encourages the SGC to take great risks with the captured Goa'uld human ancient hybrid Kalek to learn more about the ascension process. When the studies cause injury and death among SGC personnel, Woolsey acknowledges his own error and pleads for forgiveness from the SG-1 team. Being the U.S.'s representative on the newly formed International Oversight Advisory Committee (IOA), Woolsey and some colleagues are rescued by SG-1 and the crew of the Odyssey after a catastrophe at the Gamma site in The Scourge, which he later considers an eye-opening experience. Woolsey makes two more appearances in Flesh and Blood and Morpheus, and last appears on SG-1 in Season 10's The Shroud. Woolsey remembers the Kalek incident and decides that Daniel, who transformed into a prior, is too dangerous and must be placed indefinitely into stasis. However, Daniel frees himself before Woolsey's plans can be enacted. Robert Picardo was in the main cast of Star Trek Voyager from 1995 to 2001. He was familiar with Stargate SG-1 from his time as a Showtime subscriber. He was offered a one-day guest star as Richard Woolsey for the SG-1 episode, Heroes, In Season 7 2004, while he was working on The Outer Limits in Vancouver, where Stargate SG-1 is filmed. He was then brought back for the follow-up episode, Inauguration, which began the rehabilitation of the Woolsey character. With the story introduction of the IOA, the Woolsey character made more regular appearances to annoy people. Eventually, humor was added to the role, and the character was spun over to Atlantis as a recurring guest character. Picardo later became a main character in Stargate Atlantis. Producer Joseph Malozzi said that, "Whenever I do interviews, I often draw parallels between Amanda Tapping and Robert Picardo. They are both incredibly kind, professional, delightful to work with, and gifted actors who always elevate the performances of anyone they share a scene with." Frank Simmons. Colonel Frank Simmons, played by John de Lancie, Seasons 5 to 6, the NID liaison to Stargate Command after Col. Harry Maybourne's arrest for treason. Simmons is introduced in Season 5's Ascension, and is notorious for claiming to have the best interest of the nation at heart, while really he has his own political agenda. In Desperate Measures, Simmons shoots O'Neill in the back while O'Neill was attempting to capture a Goa'uld who has taken Adrian Conrad as host. 48 Hours. Simmons' involvement in the disappearance of the Adrian Conrad Goa'uld, whom he now holds captive, is revealed and General Hammond has him arrested. In Season 6's Prometheus, rogue NID agents hijack the unfinished starship Prometheus and demand that Simmons, along with Adrian Conrad's Goa'uld, be released. It later turns out that Simmons had orchestrated the entire affair. When Conrad is killed, the Goa'uld infects Simmons. O'Neill is able to open an emergency airlock and releases Simmons into hard vacuum, killing both him and the Goa'uld. Recurring Earth ship crew characters. Catherine Womack, played by Chella Horsdal, Seasons 8 to 9, a U.S. Air Force officer of unknown rank. She takes over from Major Erin Gant as the helmsman of the Prometheus in Season 8's in New Order, Part 2, and is last seen in Full Alert. Paul Emerson, played by Matthew Glave, Seasons 9 to 10, introduced as the commander of the Odyssey in Season 9's Off the Grid, rescuing SG-1 and aiding in their mission to take back all stolen Stargates from Baal's ship. In the next episode, The Scourge, he again rescues SG-1 and a team of the IOA from the Gamma site. In the Season 9 finale, Camelot, Emerson teams up the Odyssey with many other ships of the Jaffa, the Asgard and the Lucian Alliance to battle the Ori battlecruisers which come through an open supergate, and the Odyssey takes much damage. Emerson continues serving as the commander of the Odyssey in Season 10 but is killed by a member of the Lucian Alliance in Company of Thieves. Erin Gant, played by Ingrid Kavelaars, Seasons 6 to 7, a U.S. Air Force major and the first known helmsman of the Prometheus under Colonels Ronson and Kirkland as well as General George Hammond. She is first seen in Memento and last seen in Lost City. Kevin Marks, played by Martin Christopher, Seasons 9 to 10, a USAF officer aboard the Prometheus introduced in Avalon Part 1, helping Mitchell and SG-1 locate and gain access to the ancient stronghold at Avalon. Marks is also present during the Kalana mission in Beachhead. and the subsequent search for Gerak's hidden mothership in orbit of Earth's moon in Ex Deus Machina, after which he is promoted to captain. Following the destruction of the Prometheus in Ethon, Marx is promoted to major and becomes a bridge officer on board the Odyssey, where he participates in various operations in Camelot, The Scourge, Flesh and Blood, Talion, and Unending. Mark's last apparent SG-1 mission on board the Odyssey is the retrieval of the Ark of Truth from the Ori home galaxy in Stargate, the Ark of Truth. He takes a similar bridge position on board the Apollo in Atlantis's Be All My Sins Remembered, and transfers to Daedalus in Search and Rescue. He is also last seen on board the George Hammond under the command of Samantha Carter. Lionel Pendergast, played by Barclay Hope seasons 8 to 9, replaces Colonel William Ronson as commander of the Prometheus and is first seen in New Order Part 2, patrolling Earth. Pendergast intercepts Thor's Asgard mothership Daniel Jackson after its arrival in Earth's solar system and destroys a Trust-controlled Alkesh in Full Alert. He is leading the search of Osiris's cloaked Alkesh in Earth's orbit in Endgame, and transports the Stargate and SG-1 aboard before the enemy vessel enters hyperspace. In Season 9's Beachhead, Pendergast delivers a Mark 9 warhead to an Ori beachhead and maintains the ship's position during the mission despite Jaffa and Ori interruption. Pendergast dies during the destruction of the Prometheus by an Ori satellite weapon in Ethon. He remained aboard to beam his crew off the ship, thus saving 76 lives. William Ronson, played by John Novak seasons 6 to 7, a USAF colonel and commander of the Prometheus during seasons 6 and 7. Ian Davidson, played by Fulvio Cesare season 10, a USAF colonel who takes command of the Odyssey in the season 10 episodes Family Ties and Dominion, following the death of his predecessor, Colonel Paul Emerson. Other recurring Earth characters. Jacob Carter, played by Carmen Argenziano seasons 2 to 8, a retired United States Air Force Major General and the widowed father of Samantha Carter and Mark Carter. Jacob Carter is introduced in Season 2's Secrets as a USAF general dying of cancer, and after becoming a willing host of a Tok'ra named Selmak who would cure his illness. The Tok'ra. He frequently recurs as the Tok'ra liaison to Earth. As a member of the Tok'ra High Council, Jacob Selmak engages in Tok'ra covert operations and provides help to Stargate Command when problems arise. He goes on off-world missions with SG-1, and frequently provides valuable knowledge and expertise, including the ability to use a go-out healing device. When the Earth-Tok'ra relations deteriorate, Jacob Selmak remains the strongest link between the Allies despite his loss of influence in the Tok'ra High Council. In Season 7's Death Knell, Jacob helps his daughter devise the Kull Disruptor as an invaluable weapon in fighting the army of Kull warriors of Anubis's creation. He also plays a key role in retuning the Dakara superweapon to the right pattern to attack the replicators in Season 8's Reckoning. But Selmak dies of old age one episode later in Threads. along with Jacob, who wouldn't let go of him a few weeks earlier, knowing by keeping Selmak alive he would help in the fight against the replicators, but would ultimately die with Selmak due to release of a poison when a symbiote dies. Selmak fell into a coma shortly after the Dakara superweapon was activated, thus preventing him from saving Jacob. Adrian Conrad, played by Bill Marchant, seasons 5 to 6, a wealthy businessman suffering from an incurable terminal illness and desperate to uncover the regenerative biological secrets of Goa'uld symbiotes. He hopes to learn the effects a blending had on a human by abducting Carter in "desperate measures", but her resistance forces him to be blended with the symbiote himself. Conrad, incarcerated under the control of Frank Simmons of the NID, unknowingly assists in freeing Teal'c from the inner workings of the Stargate in 48 hours. Rogue NID agents are eventually able to release Conrad and Simmons from custody and escape with them aboard the hijacked and unfinished starship Prometheus. The Goa'uld desires to gain control of the Prometheus and finds its way into Kol. Simmons after Simmons killed Conrad. O'Neill releases the infected Simmons into the vacuum of space through an airlock during a fight. Paul Davis, played by Colin Cunningham, seasons 2 to 6, 8, a United States Air Force major stationed at the Pentagon. He is introduced in season 2's A Matter of Time and recurs in 15 Stargate SG-1 episodes, usually aiding Stargate Command during conflicts with other nations on Earth and other portions of the United States government. He last appears in an alternate timeline in Season 8's Mobius, and makes a cameo appearance at the beginning of Stargate Continuum. He also appeared in the Stargate Atlantis series finale, Enemy at the Gate. Julia Donovan, played by Kendall Cross, seasons 6, 8 to 10, a TV reporter who learns of the Prometheus program in season 6's Prometheus and intends to do a story on it. When she gets caught up in a rogue NID operation during her tour of the ship, she changes her mind in promise to be the first one to publish the story if and when the Stargate program goes public. She helps cover up Stargate-related issues in Season 8's Covenant and Season 9's Ex Deus Machina, and appears in an alternate universe in Season 10's The Road Not Taken. Henry Hayes, played by William Devane, season 7, the President of the United States from season 7 onwards, introduced in season 7's Inauguration. After Vice President Robert Kinsey and NID agent Richard Woolsey inform him about the Stargate program and several problems at Stargate Command, Hayes replaces General Hammond with civilian Dr. Elizabeth Weir as the new commander of Stargate Command in Lost City. Hayes then appoints Hammond to command of the Prometheus during Anubis's actual invasion on Earth and forces Kinsey into resigning. After Anubis's defeat, Hayes puts O'Neill in command of the SGC and selects Dr. Elizabeth Weir as the leader of the Atlantis expedition. His first official visit to the SGC is alluded to in Season 8's 0 Hour, and he is mentioned again in Season 10's Bad Guys. President Hayes returns in an alternate timeline in Stargate Continuum. Catherine Langford, played by Kelly Vint, girl in the film, Vivica Lindfors, elderly lady in the film, Elizabeth Hoffman, elderly lady in season 1, Nancy McClure, young woman in season 1, and Glynis Davies, middle-aged woman in season 2, Ellie Gall, Stargate Origins, daughter of archaeologist Professor Paul Langford who discovered the Stargate. As a girl she acquired an amulet depicting the Eye of Ra Ra during the excavation of the Stargate in Giza in 1928. In present day of Stargate, she gives the amulet to Daniel before his first mission through the Stargate to Abydos. Her fiancé, a scientist named Ernest Littlefield, played by Keane Curtis and Paul McGillian, is the first human to have traveled through the Stargate since the ancient Egyptians buried it. Catherine and Ernest were separated by a gate incident in 1945 and were reunited in the mid-season 1 episode, The Torment of Tantalus. But Ernest is never seen again in the series, although he is mentioned in Season 1's There But for the Grace of God and Season 2's The Fifth Race. Catherine Langford appears again in alternate universes and times in There But for the Grace of God and 1969. Her death is announced in Season 8's Mobius, Part 1. She leaves her personal collection of documents and artifacts, including the Golden Medallion of Ra, to Daniel Jackson. Rodney Mackay, played by David Hewlett, seasons 5 to 6, 8 to 10, a brilliant scientist who works with Samantha Carter in 48 Hours, Redemption, two-parter, Mobius, two-parter, The Pegasus Project, The Road Not Taken. Rodney Mackay went on to become a main character on the spin-off series, Stargate Atlantis. Robert Samuels, played by Robert Wisden, seasons 1 to 2, 8, a USAF lieutenant colonel who re-introduces O'Neill to the Stargate program in Children of the Gods. He repeatedly raises his concerns over the SGC's and Hammond's incompetence in politics and The Serpent's Lair. Samuels last appears in an alternate universe in Season 8's Mobius, Part 1. Pete Shanahan, played by David DeLuise, seasons 7 to 8, a police detective working in Denver, Colorado. He meets Carter and develops a romantic relationship with her in the late Season 7 episode, Chimera, after Carter's brother set them up. He is divorced since his previous wife could not quite cope with his work. Curious about Carter's work, he finds out about Carter's involvement with a top-secret project through an FBI acquaintance. After witnessing a fight between SG-1 and Osiris, he is given security clearance and learns the true nature of the Stargate program. Carter and Shanahan continue to see each other throughout Seasons 7 and 8 until Shanahan proposes to marry Carter in Affinity. She agrees, but she cancels the wedding and breaks up with him in Threads, after he had already made wedding arrangements and was ready to buy a house. General Morris Vidrine, played by Stephen Williams, seasons 4, 7, a USAF general who oversaw the development and operations of Earth's fleet of spacecraft built using alien technology, including the X-301 and BC-303.